podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket. When you think of big families, maybe you think of 5 kids, 6 kids, 7 kids, maybe 10 kids or 12 kids. Patrick and Carissa Douglas join us today, and they have 14 kids and another 8 in heaven. And they share about their marriage, how they met, about how God placed on their heart a desire and a love for big families, about what it's meant to trust in the Lord as their family grew, and about the joy and the challenges that come with life with lots of kids. And we hope it's helpful for you. God bless. Good day, everybody. Welcome to In the Thicket podcast. All these beautiful faces on here today. We're going to introduce ourselves, the hosts. I am Erin Kinsella, and I'm joined by...
I'm Rachel D'Souza.
And I'm Nicole Richard Williams.
And we have 2 other beautiful faces with us today, and they are Carissa and Patrick Douglas. Good morning, Douglas parents.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was going to say Douglas family, except for the minority of your family is currently in the picture right now. Yeah, so we're super excited to have you guys here. We're going to talk about big families because you guys have 14 kids. But it is just fun to see you because I haven't seen you guys in a long time in person. It's been a long time, eh?
We briefly saw each other in the summer. We were at the Mass at St. Michael's Cathedral.
Yeah.
The profession of vows for a couple Sisters of Life. So
we
brought our children there, as a bit of a witness and inspiration for them to see that. It was a beautiful Mass, and it was a holy Mass for us, I think.
Holy. It was very holy. That's our code word for awesome. It got a little chaotic with the kids.
Right. Yes.
That's great. I was like,
it was.
Yeah. That's awesome. Because when you said it's a holy Mass, I was like, oh my gosh, like it was transcendent. There was like, it wasn't
a consolation Mass. It was more like we're joining ourselves to the cross kind of Mass.
Right. Excellent.
I love
Nice.
that version of a holy Mass. I love it. I love it.
That's good. Yeah. Okay. So Patrick and I used to work together at the Newman Center, which is the University Chaplaincy at the University of Toronto, or the Catholic Chaplaincy, I should say. And then Nicole, also, she lived in the house. You were still there when Patrick, when Patrick was still there, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Patrick, it was a group interview, but you interviewed me for the student chemist minister position.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
5 years ago or whatever that was. Yeah.
So. It's crazy how fast time flies, eh? And you were there for a long time, eh, Patrick? How many years?
I was there for 17 years.
Yeah, which is good. And we had like maybe once a year or something, we got to take the students who lived in the house. So it was a team of between like 7 and 10 people or something like that, to go to Patrick and Chris's house. And with all the kids there, I still remember the one year where they basically reenacted all of Frozen for us.
Like kids?
Totally.
Awesome. Oh my gosh.
It was so great. Yeah, it was so great. It's like organized chaos.
We kind of do this like field trip sometimes with at the universities. So we're like our son Liam, he's the oldest, and he's almost 20. And for a field trip for his his house, they brought a big group of young men to our house, and it's kind of like a field trip to visit a big family. Some type of spectacle. But it's been something we've done since we were at Newman Center. We've always invited them in because we realize how powerful that can be, just to have somebody in a large family, especially if they've never had any previous exposure to large family life. They probably have some preconceived notions of what that might look like, and so it's nice to actually show them some of the fun amidst the chaos.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And it is fun. I would tell, sometimes I'd be talking to my cousins or something like that at Christmas time or whatever, and I'm the only one who's practicing out of all of them, really. So we talk about work and things like that. And so sometimes I would mention, I work with a guy named Patrick. He and his wife Carissa, they have, I forget what it was at the time, like to 10 kids, 11 kids, something like that. And they were like, what? And it was the same thing at my consecration when there were like, I don't know, 20 priests there or something like that. And they were like, did you know all of those priests? Yes. Yes.
Great.
What
I
happens?
remember Patrick, I met you a few times at different occasions at Newman. And I remember I always had this thought where I was like, he's so level-headed. I was like, maybe you have to be level-headed because you guys have such a large family, but I don't know. I think that's definitely a grace. I was always like, that is just because, like sometimes like if you're dealing with 2 or 3 kids and they're just being kids, which is awesome and so fun, but like it's hard sometimes to stay level-headed in that context. And if you're way outnumbered in a certain sense, it's like just so cool and just awesome. I just thought like that's totally, which makes sense. Like God gives you this gift of this large family, he would give you the graces to live that out well, but that
Well, they're
always
teaching
is
me.
a thing.
They're teaching me. I would say in terms of level-headed, Chris is more the level-headed.
I was gonna say,
Wow.
Carissa's pretty like very calm, like just very, serene.
Awesome.
That's definitely changed with each kid too, because I think when you have your first kid, you feel like anything you do is going to lead to like their demise somehow.
Right.
Like you're just like, oh my goodness, I left them crying for 10 minutes. They're going to be talking to a therapist about this in 20 years about the abandonment, and you kind of like get so wrapped up. And I think by the third one, you're like, I don't think they're going to remember that. I think I'm okay. And you just kind of you feel a little bit more calm. You're like, I can handle this. And honestly, like, because we've had so many kids, I think we've handled pretty much everything at this point. Like, I used to be so disgusted by having to pull something out of the toilet that shouldn't be there. But I'm like, yeah, it's par for the course now.
Removing toilets.
Removing toilets is necessary. Like
that's amazing.
We've seen it all.
You guys have invested in toilets now, invested in
that's right.
Yeah. Just okay, so before we get, because we want to hear like about how you guys met and how everything kind of started in terms of family life. But I definitely don't want to forget to mention your books, Carissa, because they're amazing, and anybody who has kids or has little people in their lives, these would be great for. So tell us a little bit about that and about your recent one.
So I started writing children's books, so books that probably be good for little kids up to probably around 8 years old. And I was writing those at the same time that I was noticing the culture change. I was noticing that there was this very strong targeting towards children. I sensed that there was a great kind of darkness brewing at that time that was very more pervasive than it ever had been in our youth. And so I thought, how do I prepare my kids for this? Because the more we're welcoming kids, the more I realize, there's the risk of losing them to this culture or seeing something very sad happen, like the rise of depression in young kids. So I thought, how do we counter that? My thought is that there's more of an onus on parents to have to introduce their children to Christ at a really young age, but like to really help them develop a strong relationship, like a strong friendship, a strong sense of his presence, so that I'm no longer the middleman, that they have their own anchor, that, and then I thought, if they have that anchor, even if they're out there in the world and I can't be there, they already have their own connection to Christ. They have their hand in his. And so I started with a book called I Go to Jesus, which was kind of to teach kids to talk to Christ in the Eucharist in a really natural way, to tell him about like all the things they were excited about, or to tell them about how, so-and-so took their teddy bear and they're kind of annoyed, like just to come up with that conversation with him in the Eucharist. And from that, I developed a book on basically theology of the body, introducing those concepts, and then forgiveness. And then I went to write another book in that series, and it's so crazy, it transformed into a novel, like literally. And then I started, there's a new now junior fiction series that's it's doing really well. And what's really fun about it is it came when my children were becoming preteens and young teens. And there's such a love for like, Marvel or all these kind of cool things. And I'm like, oh my goodness, the Catholic Church can totally like outdo any of that. Like, I was like, you have no idea. We can bilocate some of us.
Yeah, that's right.
Very few of us, but some of us, some of us can levitate.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
So that series is really fun because it's basically a lot of the attacks are from like some kind of hidden villain who's prompted by some maybe demonic force that is against the culture of life. And so the children, the group of children, which are from a large family, are tasked with a mission, and they are assigned a saint to kind of lead them through it. But then that saint can kind of share his gifts or her gifts with them. And they are oftentimes able to kind of enter almost into a spiritual dimension where they can combat the force that's behind kind of the villain attacking them. And yeah, so
That's
it's a lot of
cool.
like,
Cool.
That's so
yeah,
cool.
armor of
Yeah.
God, like, but you can see, and the offerings that they do during the day, they get to see the spiritual realities of those.
That's cool.
So the rosary later turns into this amazing chain that they can use to bind, you know, a creature.
Sweet.
It was really cool. I thought
That's
it was cool.
awesome. Okay, so we will put
Yeah.
a link in the show notes and all that stuff about like where to find your books. Where's the best place for people to buy them? Like, where would you because we can always say Amazon, but like I don't want to send people to Amazon if
Right,
there's like
right,
a good
right.
Catholic
Yeah.
place to support to buy
I
them.
think some of them are on Amazon, but it's my publisher is Scepter Publishers.
Okay.
So their website's good, and they have a Canadian site as well. So
Oh,
Sweet.
cool.
shipping can be a little bit less costly.
Awesome.
There's also there's ebooks too, if you don't want
Okay.
shipping, and so there's lots of availability. But our site, littleducklings.com, has links to everything too.
Awesome. Littleducklings.com. Okay, good. That's awesome. Okay, that makes me want to read it. Like I definitely like young adult fiction, like even the Twilight series and stuff. I
Yeah,
love
that's
Twilight
right.
so much.
Yeah.
So
And it
I
kind
would
of
totally
grows
read
like
that.
Harry Potter. Like it starts a little bit more juvenile and then it goes into more teens and tweens. So that's been fun.
Nice. Okay, that's good. I'm excited. I got new reading planned. That's
And this
amazing.
recent one features Saint Teresa of Avila. Right?
Yes.
Oh,
I brought in the
yes.
big gun.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is good. Okay, so tell us, I would love to hear, because I'm pretty sure I've heard this story before, but I would love to hear how you guys met. If you want to share a little bit about how you met and those kind of first few years and when you were married, and how, like, did you always have this desire for a big family, or was that something that grew over time, or how did that kind of develop?
Well, we independently came from moderate sized families, I guess large Catholic families, 4 and 5 in terms of children in our respective families. And for my part, I always grew up with a lot of extended family around, especially around my grandmother's house. And we lived close to her, and a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins. So always had that sort of big family sense, and really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the laughter and just the energy and just the gatherings, the food, and all of that. But it wasn't until I was about 12 that it was solidified for me when we went on a family trip to Ireland to visit some of my dad's relatives, and his cousin had 14 children at the time.
Nice.
And we traveled around. It was nice, for a number of young kids traveling around, but we felt most at home at their place. They just sort of absorbed us, and they had children around their age, like 3 or 4 of them, that sort of just took us in. It's like, hey, let's go out to the swing. Hey, let me the seesaw here. They just like totally like absorbed us, and it was so amazing, that sense of hospitality and sense of joy. And I guess my parents were just freed up a little bit to like just visit with the adults, and we were just playing. But it always stuck with me, and I always respected my cousins in that family. But it just sort of rested with me. I never imagined it would be possible where I lived, and whether I would find a woman who would want that many children. But I just had the sense that would be a really amazing experience to have. Yeah.
And in terms of how we met, we kind of consider ourselves a JP2 couple, because we met at the retreat 1 year before World Youth Day came to Toronto. So they had called a lot of representatives to come from each parish, and they had these retreats that they put on for them so they could connect and, prep for that big event. And so we met each other, and Patrick was with Newman Center at the time, and I was representing my parish in the Georgina area. And it was funny because we didn't really talk a lot, but there was some strange things. I was writing in a prayer journal at the time, and for some reason I just wrote, thank you for allowing me to meet Patrick. And I'm like, and then I wrote, what are you starting here? And it was a really strange thing because I mean, our encounter was like really small. I think we were about to go out of a pew in the church, the little chapel there. And there was a girl beside me. And so Patrick should have gone first. His pew should have emptied out first, but he was kind of being a gentleman. So he turned behind and was like, yo, you guys go first. And the girl with me was like, oh, you've got a rugby shirt on. Do you play rugby? And he's like, no. And then he turned to me and went, what's your name, or where are you from? So I was like, oh, hey. Oh. And then I couldn't remember where I was from. So I had to like look at my name tag for a second.
So cute. I love
So
that.
it was really good. But really, I think where God was just like, this is it, was a few months later when we were starting, we finally got a new church built. We were in a gymnasium. We were one of those parishes. And so we invited a lot of our connections from that retreat to come. And so Patrick came, and afterwards, after the mass, we were going to have, we live by the lake. So we're kind of lake people. So we were like, we're going to do a bonfire, bring tents, you can, camp out. And then we're going to go to the lake for like midnight swim. It's gonna be awesome. And
Nice.
so my little brother at the time, I think he was like, 14.
Yeah.
I think he was 14 years old. And so I drove home with him just to grab my swimsuit and get changed and stuff. And as I was there, he's just like, that guy that I think you like, he's like, you're never going to get with him because you don't talk, you don't say anything. And I'm like, I talk, I just wait for him to like, engage. I'm an introvert. So it's
Right.
interesting. So he's like, yeah, but you're never going to get with him because you're not putting yourself out there. And I'm like, hey, if God wants me to be with this person, he's going to make a way. I was like, I'm going to put it in his hands. I'm available. I'm ready, but I'm going to leave it to him. And so he's like, oh, then you're never going to get with him. I'm like, oh, that's me, little faith.
Wow.
So then we drove to the lake, and then Patrick was there with the other people, and not a lot of people actually wanted to go swimming, surprisingly, but Patrick went in, and myself and my brother went in, and then the same girl who asked about the rugby shirt went in as well.
That's awesome.
So I'm like, oh man. And she was good. She was able to talk to him really easily. And I was kind of like swimming off to the side, and my brother was kind of going, yeah. And like,
Man, your brother is so vicious. That's awesome.
So then I remember kind of just praying in that moment. And I, it's just like, Lord, if you want me to be with him, then just make a way. And then all of a sudden, the rugby shirt girl cries out in pain because she has a cramp. And she's like, oh no, she's like, I'm going to go back to shore. And so she swims back to shore. And my brother was just like, his eyes just started bugging out. And he's like, I'm going to go check on her. And so suddenly it's like Patrick and me in the middle of this perfectly like still and shiny lake with stars all over the place. And I'm like, wow, God, you are good.
That's hilarious.
So it was good. And honestly, like those just clarity signs were there all the time, because I kept praying like, Lord, just be very clear with me, because I'm not very smart. I won't pick up on things. And
I pray the
like,
same.
I'm like, hit me over the head. Like, just do it over and over again. Just like, bam, it's him. Bam, like, let me know. And he was really faithful to that. In fact, I was actually, in terms of our engagement, I was backpacking for about 5 weeks. It had already been planned. So before I met Patrick, I went off with my best friend. So this was about like 2.5 months or 3 months into our dating that I kind of left for 5 weeks. And when we were in Italy, in Florence, my best friend pulled me into like a little kind of store on one of those bridges. And she's like, come look at engagement rings. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, oh no, come on, just show me the one you would pick. And then, so we were looking at rings, and she found this one that was almost like something I'd never seen before. It was like a propeller shape kind of ring. So just not your typical, and it had the diamond was kind of inlaid, like it was set back. And I was like, well, that'd be good for kids so that you don't scrape them up. And she's like, I'm like, that's a really nice ring. So I was like, but let's get out of here. This is too much. This is like kind of scaring me. So when we got back from our big trip, Patrick picked me up. And the next day, I think it was either the next day or the day after, he proposed. And it was beautiful. Like the words that he said are just incredible to me, because he said, I think he was hugging me at the time really tightly. And he goes, I love you, but. And I'm like, what do you mean, but? Like, why is there a but after that? He said, I love you, but I'll never be able to love you as much as Christ loves you. But I would like to spend the rest of my life trying. Will you hear me? And I was like, yes. But then he pulls out the ring, and it is exactly the same ring that I had seen when I was in Florence. And so I said yes, but then my next words were, did you talk to my best friend? And he's like, what? No, I
Seriously?
I thought, I was like, oh, she picked it up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So probably around the same time I was looking, he was
That's
purchasing
crazy.
that all on his own. So it was just another clarity
Totally.
on the head that I needed. Like, yeah, this is my will for you guys.
That's awesome.
And I was affirmed by all of these signs throughout that whole process, from meeting Carissa to, you know, having a very deep conversation in the lake that night about our families and our futures. And before that, you know, if, you know, discerning a relationship or lack of discernment of a relationship, you know, I would always wait for like a sure sign. I'd kind of be, you know, reluctant or whatnot, but I felt very confident and emboldened to approach and to pursue Carissa in such a way that it was not in my nature, or I didn't feel it was in my nature at the time. So like I was kind of surprised by that, but how easy it was when we, you know, started dating. Like it almost felt like I was coming home. It's just someone, you know, that God has prepared for me.
Yeah, we really had this like vulnerability to each other right from the beginning. Like when I went on a date with him, I'm like, by the way, this is my first date, so if I do anything wrong, just go ahead, correct me. I'm like, because you know. And that was awesome. Great. It had that comfort, you know, as a couple would have, having been together for many years. So it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
So all these signs, like going to the jewelry store and no one knowing and thinking, this is really interesting, this is a different kind of a ring, or just some of these other little signs or things that people would say. It was quite
That's
amazing.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It also strikes me too, like, I'm just thinking in the context of families, because I mean, now this is like a bunch of years later, you've had a baseball team worth of kids, and like, but it's founded on a really strong relationship with each other, you know, like that, because sometimes I think when we talk about, you know, having lots of kids or things like that, that sometimes the like, I've heard some couple, I can't say because I'm not married. I am in fact married to Jesus. I will not have my own children, but I've heard some couples talk about the process of having to kind of recover that relationship because they put more of their energy, like they gave themselves entirely to their kids and forgot to give themselves to each other as the root of their ability to, you know, to love kids and to be in that sacrament and to be receiving that grace. So it really, like, it strikes me that that's for you guys, like the strength of your relationship and the founding of that. And I'm wondering if, like, how has that looked like as you've, you know, gone from 0 kids up to 14 kids? Like, what has that looked like, your relationship with each other?
Well, we've been really intentional about fostering a relationship because I think we understood early on that the best gift we could give to our children is to be madly in love with each other. And I thought if we are, then that will flow through to them, and it will give them that sense of stability that they can trust that we're always going to be there, we're always going to be together, and that's a really huge gift, especially in this day and age. I think too that there's been times, and there are going to be times in a relationship where you almost have to start to focus on one child in particular. But even in those instances, like God, I think, provides that opportunity for couples to intentionally reconnect. An example is when we were first married. So we had our kids like right away. I think when we ended up going to World Youth Day, which was a year after the where we had met that first retreat, we were already married and expecting our first child. We had gotten a dispensation to get married 6 months. So he proposed about 3.5 months after we started dating. We were married 6 months later, and then we were expecting our first baby at World Youth Day. So that trend continued, and we had a baby every year, really, for quite a few years. So early on, though, we had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And I was pregnant with the 4th. And I remember I was changing Christian, our second baby's diaper, and I came across blood, and I thought this is not good. And then so I checked for any scrapes or possible rashes or things, and there was nothing there. So I thought, well, this has come internally. This is from something internal, and I thought I should probably take him to emerge. He was also developing a fever, so I thought, well, we should check this out. So when a trip to the emergency and an ultrasound later, we discovered he had a tumor on his kidney.
Wow.
And so I remember just kind of looking stunned at this. I'm like, he's 2 years old. He has cancer. Like, this is crazy. And I think the doctor told me right away, he's like, yeah, this is, by the looks of it and the nature of this tumor, it's definitely cancer. And he's like, so I remember calling Patrick and telling him to meet me there, and just kind of saying to him, like, you know, this is actually quite serious. This is like a large tumor that they'll have to take out, and his kidney possibly. I'm like, we could lose him. And I remember him saying, like, but he was never ours to begin with, you know. And it was a kind of moment that was just set the stage for what would have to be ahead in terms of the trials that kind of are joined to that. But what was really strange is in that moment, I think both Patrick and I kind of felt it. There was this strange joy that overcame us. And the only way I can explain it is, like, at least for my part, inside I was thinking, like, this is horrible. Like, I can't believe this. We're going to have to carry this cross. Like, this is huge. And I have another baby, like 2 other babies at home, and I'm pregnant. Like, I don't know how we can do this. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, like, God must really, really want something special for our marriage and for our family, that he would allow us to carry this cross this early on in our marriage, that he's willing to have us go through that together. And there was this kind of almost strange gratitude, like, that he would trust us with this, that he would, and then also that he gave us that ability to surrender that to him, and to know that he was the one who was going to be carrying us. And it was very hard because I had to spend a lot of time at the hospital. So we were separated. I was separated from my other children, and they're so little. They're like a 3-year-old and 1-year-old, so they don't understand. And then it was hard for us to even, like, just be able to coordinate that the two of us would be able to spend time together and talk. But we felt united, I think, knowing that we were carrying this cross together, even though we had to be kind of separated at the time, except for, you know, brief exchanges where he'd be able to come in. And I remember at one point he called me and said that our 1-year-old was, like, so sick, and she was lethargic. She wasn't eating or drinking. She was, like, almost like a rag doll in his arms. And he's like, I have to bring her in. And I'm like, I can't be there. And I'm like, because I was stuck in the hospital, you know, knowing that my son was about to have surgery, and I just felt helpless. And I'm like, bring her here so I can at least meet her and emerge. You can go up with Christian and let me just at least be with her. So he came, and I had the baby and brought her in, and I was sitting there quite calm. Like, it was kind of strange. Like, it was very hard knowing she was sick, and that, but then I had this sense of peace. And then all of a sudden, everything started to hit me, like everything. So this moment of, oh my gosh, like, I haven't been there for her. And so they started asking me questions like, when was the last time she ate? When was the last time she drank? And I'm like, I don't know. And I'm like, I've been upstairs with my 2-year-old who has to have surgery, and they're waiting for him to get over an infection, and I don't know, and I'm pregnant, and I'm like, and my 3-year-old is not doing well, and he thinks I've left him, and he keeps asking for me, and I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know. And then I started, like, kind of crying, and I'd been so strong the whole time, like, in the sense that I was able to have that peace. But then it was so crazy, because in that moment when I felt like the world is just, like, dropping out from under my feet and I'm a failure, and then all of a sudden I was lifted up. And I can't explain it. It's just that I felt like someone just kind of picked me up and held me. And the words that I heard in my mind, just pressed almost into my heart, were, this is how it would be if I were not carrying you. And in that moment, I just, again, that resounding joy, like, yes, like, this, he's carrying us. We can do this. We can actually get through this, and we're fine. We'll grow stronger from it. Like, it was a really beautiful, beautiful moment.
Yeah,
That's
wow.
beautiful.
That's
It was
so
an opportunity for
incredible.
us to also discover new ways for us to prioritize our relationship as
That's
well
right.
as a
Yeah.
married couple, like through all of those challenges and the visits and appointments and that sort of thing, and just our busy lives, to prioritize time for each other all throughout the years of our marriage. So, as much as, we would do regular date nights, just, pick up, take up for one another, just the little things that we can do every day. But I sort of really believe it's, we love God first, and then I love my wife second, and then my children. It's not that I love them less, but there's an order to
Yeah.
things. And I think that there's a God's order in that.
That's right. And it's almost like the love that we have each other, it flows into the love that we have for our children. So
Yeah.
the more we foster that, the more fervent it is for our children, which is incredible. But it's kind of amazing too, because I realize more and more, like every time we've said yes to the possibility of welcoming another child, we've recognized that means not only a yes to life, but a yes to potential loss, a yes to possibly grief, a yes to no more sleep for a long time, or there's
Yeah.
such a broad yes that we've been given, and we have lost babies along the way too. We actually have, in total, I had 22 children. I have
Wow.
14 on earth and 8 in heaven, and I'm so grateful for those little ones too, because I keep telling Patrick, I'm like, I can't leave this world with my large family without knowing that there's another large family waiting for me.
Yeah, that's right.
I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
it's of course I can, but it has made heaven that much more appealing to me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and just the power of the intercession of those little ones in heaven with the
Yes.
Lord for your
Yes.
family, like
Yeah.
that's very real.
And our children, like they actually pray to their siblings in heaven. Like we named them all, and so at the end of their night prayers, they say Saint Judah, Mary, Francis, Joseph, Gwen Maria, Micaiah, Angel. They go through the list and they say pray for us at the end. So we really see them as our powerful intercessors.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm.
Man, that's such a crazy. I'm just thinking about that story of in the hospital, and like that's so real. Like the grace of God is like God's presence with you is real. It's not you're not, he's not just, I mean, your relationship with him. And I think that's what's kind of hitting me as I'm hearing your story, that it's I mean, it has to be for you to live the vocation that he's called you to. There's no way that it's like you can never forget that. Like you can never, like he's constantly with you. And that's so powerful, because that witness isn't just there for your family, then it's there for us now listening on the podcast. It's there for your extended family, your friends, like just the presence of the Lord that you carry with you that enables you to live out your vocation in this way is so evangelistic. It's such a witness, because like, I mean, I'm just saying, I just occurring to me, like your family itself, obviously, like this big, beautiful family, that's in itself sort of an impact and a witness, just sort of to look at, to encounter. But I think it's even that much more powerful, because that witness is so deep, like that the relationship that you guys have with God is so rooted and so deep and so much at the center of everything that you are, that it's a true witness. It's a real, like that you can sort of test the truth of it in sort of the encounter that people have with you guys, and just experiencing like, wow, yeah, Jesus is real and he's really here at the heart of everything. And yeah, and that's how you're doing what you're doing. And I had this totally superficial thought, but I was like, you guys also both look very young. Which
True.
which I think, like,
So
I
true.
honestly, I sometimes think, like, I spent a week at Madonna House. Shout out Madonna House. I love that place. But I spent a week there, and everybody there looks sort of like ageless. Like you can't, like, even if they have gray hair, you honestly can't tell. Like they could be 50 or they could be 80. Like but you don't know. Like they just kind of look ageless. That's the best way that I can describe it. And I really think that sometimes when you're walking really closely with the Holy Spirit, he sort of just, it's sort of a thing that can happen. And I think like even that is like, there's like visible, but also the visible witness that you guys have in all of these kind of material ways is really, it's so true because of the deep reality of your life with God that's just always there, and it sounds to me like it is always there. And awesome.
And it's not just like, yeah, it's not like, okay, you have 14 kids and life has been great. There's never been any problems. But there's been like there's real joy that coexists in both of you and in your marriage and in your family, even with all of those things. Like, it's a big deal having, like, I mean, miscarriage, even, like going through miscarriage, and having that many children, like having 8 children in heaven, like that's a big thing, and going through that with your kids when they're that young. And then even I would maybe like to hear about even just about that, like when you're sitting with 4 or 5 kids or something like that, what it was like for you guys to be open to life. Like, did you struggle with that at times, thinking that you might not be able to do it? Or was it something that you had an assurance from the Lord that you would be able to do it because of that experience, with Christian and all of those things? Or what was that like?
I think God implanted in us this sense of trust and this strangely radical openness to life. So when we were dating on our 3rd date, I think it was, we got into more deep conversations about the future. And I just posed that question and I said, Carissa, how many children do you see yourself having?
And it's funny because up to then, everyone who knew me before that knew I always wanted like a dozen kids. But then I had this moment like, wait a second.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Maybe this person might not want 12 kids. And I realized, wait a second, like I've never worried about that before. I never thought of it before. I just thought that I would be brought to the right person. And so, yeah, I did have this moment of like, wow, what if I say 12 and he runs away, And so I think I said I had 2 answers to that question. And I said, the first answer is however many kids God wants to give me. And he was like, oh, and he hugged me. And I'm like, okay, this is a good sign.
And I said, how many do you really want?
Yeah.
Squeezing me. And I'm like, the other answer is 12. And then he hugged me tighter. So that was good. A good sign.
Yeah, that's a good sign. No running away.
We were equally yoked, I felt, and always with the recognition that, children are a gift and we'll gladly accept any number of children that God would send our way. But I mean, I think it just works with our personalities as well. And I think God knows that in calling us into this vocation to be open to having a large family. I think it's something very specific. It's not something that everyone is called to.
Right.
Yeah.
But for myself, like I feel that I've always had this desire to, and I enjoy that I get something out of it, like hosting big gatherings, attending to people's needs, finding places for people to sleep, that sort of a thing. And so that, I don't know, it just resonated with me. That's something that maybe, I can lend those gifts to being a father of a large family.
Yeah, it's funny. We always watch Muppet Family Christmas. That's kind of one of our traditions. And the part that kind of makes me laugh is when they're like, oh, well, so-and-so sleeping in the bathtub and we can hang some. And they're like, well, there's always room for more. And then it's just like, that's Patrick.
That's awesome.
Kids all have beds. So yeah.
No one's sleeping in the bathtub. Okay, cool.
That's right.
Yeah, I do think that really trust is the underlying, I guess, our driving force in terms of our relationship with each other and relationship with God. We've just always had this sense that, if God wants to send us another child, he'll be our source of provision. He'll take care of it. He'll send the right person, the right, the family dynamic won't be complete without that child that he wants to send to us. And with each child, that dynamic is changing and always for the better, really. But it also means sometimes that we hear him saying no. And that happened, I remember, when I had miscarried twice in a row. And I was speaking with some of the NAPRO doctors, and they were saying, you might need to wait, to give a little time for your body to kind of recalibrate. And so his answer to us, that was, a no from him at that point. And we're like, we have to be open to kind of his no, his yes, here's the child, or his no, like not right now, not a good time. And so I remember we avoided pregnancy for probably quite a few cycles before we were able to be open again. So like there's all kinds of considerations. And I do know that, like, I never I'm not one of those people that says just have all the babies all the time. I'm like,
Yeah.
look at your, you know, mentally, where are you at? Like, is this, are you really just surviving and you're finding it very hard to cope? Then listen to your body, listen to what's happening, because that sometimes is God's way of saying,
Yeah.
okay, slow down. Like, you know, it's okay.
Yeah.
Take some time, you know.
Yeah.
That's really important. Yeah.
So true. Yeah. Because there are people who, I mean, it's so clear and so beautiful as you're kind of describing how God has led you both like together, and this sort of vocation and kind of the mission of your marriage and just all of the beautiful things. But it was like something that God put those desires in your heart and has been discerned, and it has been, you know, and I think sometimes for young Catholics who are thinking of marriage, or they can be kind of cut and paste ideas or ideals of like, oh, this is what it means to be a good Catholic family. It's, you know, to have a lot of children, or to get married at this time, or, you know, just kind of put
sort of like template mentality or something.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like, you can copy and paste someone else's discernment into your own life somehow.
Exactly.
Which
what you're saying is so important in that regard. It's like, no, God is speaking to, and God has been speaking to you guys in so many of the ways that you've shared already. And that's, I mean, that's why I think like this is such a cool, your life is such a cool encounter for people, or witness for people, because it's not this sort of template kind of mentality. It was really this journey that you both are on and have been on with God since before you met each other, and then with each other, you know, and with all your children. So, and you can't not have that. You can't have, you know, a family without sort of that relationship, like you said. And even the books that you're writing, you're trying to encourage children to have that relationship. Because it sort of, has guided you so specifically in a way, you know, in your lives.
And we kind of, we recognize like our even our mission with our kids, like, is to get them to heaven. But I'm also seeing like, you know, God has a story for them, and that might mean, you know, he has the way in which he wants them to set the world on fire. And so we've been realizing how important it is for us to kind of make sure that we're growing in holiness ourselves, like that we're really living that there's no separation between what they see in the home and you know, what I seem to profess in terms of you know, my faith or stuff. Like, they just have to see that seamlessly, completely saturated in every act and in my words and the way I am. So it's hard that way too, because I have a lot of accountability partners.
Awesome.
Them really.
Yeah.
But it's true. Like, and I realize that the more I fall in love with Christ, the more likely I'm able to fulfill that mission of my children falling.
Totally. Yeah. I'm wondering if like if there are people who are maybe at the beginning of they're either younger and maybe they have a couple of kids, or they're not married yet and they're thinking about family or discerning these things. I'm wondering if you could share a couple of the things that have been like surprising joys and surprising crosses or challenges that have come with having a big family.
It's there's definitely been challenges, and the challenges that are, you know, having to do with my own growth as a husband and as a father, and learning and going to confession and trying to be better. But I'm also, I feel transformed by more of a sense of joy in all of those things. And so I think in addition to what Carissa was saying about trust in God, just because of where I've come from, and just so grateful for, you know, God penetrating my life in a special way, that I just feel gratitude for the path that he's very clearly led me on. So like whenever these challenges or struggles, you know, the situation with health, or you know, just you know, the many things that are happening, I think one of the big challenges for our family is time, and sort of allocating our time, and making sure our children have enough time, and many other commitments, and they're all good. But I think that's just, you know, that's a day-to-day regular challenge. But I think just thinking about and having that sense of gratitude throughout it all, like, just makes any of those challenges so much more surmountable. So it's I don't know, I may have more of a positive attitude, and some people might accuse me of being a bit more naively optimistic, but I can't help it, because I know what our destiny is. I know, you know, who has the victory, and I know where we're going. So as long as I can keep on that path.
I think I've been surprised by joy in my failure. And I know that sounds
Mm.
odd, or how to explain that. Like here's an example. I remember I had twins, and I remember one night I was like nursing them. So so I had the bassinet like that was tethered to the bed, so like right up, but it kind of was dropped down about probably 6 inches from our mattress height. And so I'm sitting right beside it. I pulled out one twin and kind of started nursing her, and I fell asleep. And so this baby just like rolled down. She rolled down into the bassinet on top of brother, right? And so she's crying, and then all of a sudden he's crying, and then like I'm crying, and I'm just like,
Oh
oh
my
my
gosh.
goodness, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And then I kind of picked her up, and her eyes were like, ugh. And then I started laughing because her expression was just so perfect. And I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe what he's given us, or what kind of helps us continue, is that there are these really moments like where you kind of feel like the worst person in the world. But that he kind of brings you joy even in that, or he somehow kind of tells you it's okay. And sometimes even her expression somehow said, it's okay, I still love you. And I think that's it. There's so many trials, there's so many times where you feel like you're completely failing at it, but he offers these little moments of like, he just even those smiles, or those crazy things that they can say to you that crack you up and make you feel like, okay, I can do this, you know, even though I feel like the laundry pile is like a mountain right now, and there's this to do, and this person's crying because, you know, I don't know, somebody insulted her teddy bear, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Somehow he provides that joy amidst those struggles. And I think that's been surprising, is how often he offers those little consolations, I think, to families, you know, yes, to this, that they have these moments of feeling horrible, and he just manages to send the right little toddler, you know, to, I don't know, to sneeze on their hand.
Right. Yeah.
It's okay. So that makes things better.
I was wondering, actually, as you guys are talking about, you know, yeah, kind of just like the truth of like chaos and family mayhem that is honestly everybody experiences in their families, but is also definitely apparent if you have so many kids, you know. But then I thought, have you guys ever sort of experienced like a feeling of how do we give? So you were saying, Patrick, about time, and that was actually a question that I've always thought of, is like, how do you kind of know, and is it the Lord, just does he lead you sort of instinctually to know like, okay, this child needs more attention right now? Because yeah, I mean, you know, you can't be all the time there for all of your kids, even if you had 2 kids or 3 kids, like, you know what I mean, in a certain sense, but definitely if you have many kids. So yeah, just wondering about your experiences of that, of like awareness of how to be there for your children individually, and knowing sort of when they need you, that kind of thing.
I think what's amazing is God's kind of shown himself to be the divine orchestrator. So he kind of has a sense of which child needs more attention. And I mean, this is again that element of trust that we have in embarking on this vocation, that we pray and ask the Holy Spirit to guide us and let us know if somebody's, you know, struggling, and that like always happens. It really does. And sometimes too, that we're able to trust the Holy Spirit to even inspire some of our other children to connect with that person, especially. And I think that's the gift too of siblings. Like,
It multiplies our time.
It really helps out a lot, because sometimes like sometimes they end up being the mediator between a child that's really struggling, that doesn't want to approach us, and that could happen in a small family or a large family. And then we've got this little person that just kind of somehow senses their need and is able to come to us and say, I think she's feeling like this, and gives us a sense so that we can attend to that. So we rely completely on the Holy Spirit to kind of tell us who needs some attention, but also, you know, just on his ability to speak through our other children. There was one time where we were having a conversation downstairs, and I didn't realize that one of my teenage daughters was like totally, like, she read it kind of the wrong way, but it was really hurting her, and she went to bed. And I guess like with her other teenage sisters, they must have had like a crying session. And then so one of them just kind of came downstairs and said, I think you need to talk to her. I think she needs your time. I don't think you should let her go to sleep feeling this way. And she just needs affirmation from you. And I'm like, bring her down, send her down. Like,
Yeah.
but so it's
That's
an
beautiful,
amazing
yeah.
thing how God
Yeah.
really tends to these larger families, because he probably knows that it's by ourselves we wouldn't be able to rise to
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
there's so much
Yeah.
reliance on him, in that
I think coming from a, I guess, medium-sized family, I'm from oldest of 5, and as you're saying this, I'm like, oh, absolutely. I can think of multiple times where, yeah, different, like I perceived something in the younger siblings that my parents were noticing and was able to kind of bring that to their attention, that ended up changing a major course for, or vice versa, or all these different things.
Mm.
And it's so beautiful how that works out. Or even just as I've gotten older now, so the youngest is now 23 in my family, and the friendship and support that we're able to offer each other, like so there's 4 girls and 1 boy, and we all call each other probably once or twice a week, and we're always offering support to each other, and always, it's like everyone, I used to change my younger sister's diapers, and now she's like one of my close friends and confidants, like the relationship changes and it becomes such a gift. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, that is, I
And it's so
resonate
beautiful.
with what you're saying a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, same. I come from in this crowd, a small family of 3 children. But I agreed, like the same experience. And I think it also is very valuable. So I'm also an oldest, and I think it's a very valuable experience, because you sort of grow up knowing like, oh yeah, I sort of can know people really deeply and sort of have the ability to sort of be there for people in a really beautiful and transformative way. I can like, and that helps you be a better friend, and it helps you be, it just kind of improves you as a person in so many different ways. So yeah, that's awesome.
That's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yeah. So we, of our children, we have 10 daughters and 4 boys,
wow.
right? So the
Yeah.
dynamic is really interesting. But that's another surprising, joyful thing, because like it
Mhm.
feels like I'm in one of my favorite novels, like Little Women, because
Yeah.
they're all creative, and I love when they get emotional, or they, when they are like just kind of even rough playing sometimes, like as girls
Yeah.
can, like in a
Yeah.
really
Mhm.
fun and very endearing way, where you can tell they just love each other so much.
Yeah.
And my thought is like, this is incredible, that even if something were to happen to Patrick and I know that they will be totally surrounded and supported, and
Mhm.
have no worries about that, which is a really beautiful gift, I think.
That's beautiful. I'm going to tell my parents to have more kids, I think. They're going to have to adopt, but that's okay. I just have to, because it's just me and my
Great.
sister, the smallest. Oh my goodness. Honestly, I feel like we could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, because there's just so much like beauty and goodness there. But thank you guys for sharing that. I feel like it's going to be really helpful for people who, especially if they might be in the thick of things, or they're like really looking for, if they're in a place where the Lord is teaching them how to trust more, how to rely on him more. I feel like it's going to be really helpful for them to. And you have a God wink this week, Carissa, right? I'm excited for this.
So in the morning, as you can imagine, I tend to have a lot of little visitors, especially because our oldest is 20, our youngest is 2, right? So we've got this huge spectrum of little kids that will come in. And sometimes I try to pretend I'm still asleep, depending on how tired I am. But one morning, my 6-year-old, her name's Callie, came in with her 4-year-old sister, Lucy. And so Lucy was trying to get my attention. She's shaking me and she's like, look, and she's showing me, or trying to show me, her little finger that was really sore. And so I thought, it's okay, don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden, Callie stepped in with her 6-year-old kind of wisdom. She's like, it's okay, Lucy. Jesus will heal you. And I thought in that moment, wow, I am an amazing mother, like clearly. And then she kind of adds on, with magic. Like, oh no. And then she continues and she says, but only if you're on the nice list. If you're on the naughty list, forget it. So I sat straight up and was like, no, that is Santa Claus. That is not Jesus. He does miracles, not magic. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so
Not
funny
to get
though.
too cocky.
Little kid understandings of things are the absolute best.
Yeah.
Great.
That's awesome.
Oh
That's
my
like a
goodness.
humble parent moment, but then also
Yeah.
like a God being like, You just, yeah,
Yeah, you
it's
just
fine.
just go over it.
yeah,
Yeah.
Good times, good
I
times.
try to
yeah.
capture it on my phone. Like anytime someone says something like that, I'm like, okay, I gotta write this down. I gotta type this in just to
Yeah.
try to remember it.
But
Yeah.
the good
So
thing is
true, you guys.
it's in I'm writing a new novel, and that is actually one of the scenes. I thought this is
Oh,
Yes.
that's
So great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you guys again so much for joining us today. Yeah, we really appreciate it, and we will be praying for you guys, and also for anybody out there who has a bigger family or who is struggling around that or wants to have a family and it's challenging because of reasons of infertility, or if you had just anything around families. We'll be praying for you guys in a really special way this week. And Carissa and Patrick can ask their kids to all pray for you this week too. So that's amazing. So thank you guys for joining us, and we're looking forward to being with all of you next week. God bless you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough, and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless, and see you next week.